Chapter 241-Talk to You. Li Yi wanted to grab the woman's little hand. However, the woman was extremely fast, and before Li Yi approached, she had already walked away and disappeared from sight. Li Yi smiled teasingly. Why are you shy? Then there's the awards. Sarutobi Hiruzen personally awarded him. Li Yi has now become Chunin, and not only got a piece of clothing that marks his identity, but also a brand new forehead guard. Look back. Tsunade has disappeared, and he has gone somewhere. Sarutobi Hiruzen said at this time. Li Yi, go to the medical department. Li Yi now has a bruised nose and a swollen face. Okay. Li Yi nodded in agreement. He is ready to leave. But at this moment, a gentle voice, with a hint of weakness, suddenly entered the ear. Are you Li Yi? Huh. Li Yi turned his head to look. What caught my eye was a very dignified beautiful woman. It's just that her cheeks are very pale, like a patient who has not recovered for a long time. However, her noble temperament cannot be pretended, and can only be possessed by long-term high positions. Li Yi bowed and asked, Who are you? My name is Uchiha. The beautiful woman replied. Uchiha. Li Yi rolled his eyes. She had never heard the name. Who is she? However, her facial features made Li Yi feel a little familiar. Li Yi recalled one by one in his heart. Uchiha Yonchiang, Uchiha Dishonesty, Uchiha Fugaku. Finalize a candidate, Uchiha Makoto. The facial features of this beautiful woman are very similar to Uchiha Makoto. Li Yi's elimination method only took 2 or 3 seconds. At about the same time he guessed the man's identity, Uchiha added, I am Uchiha Makoto's mother. Although he had already guessed the identity of the other party, but hearing the other party's answer in person, Li Yi's heart froze for a while. Li Yi tried his best to pretend to be calm. Hello auntie. You're welcome, I really want to see you. Do you have time? Let's talk. Uchiha asked with a smile. Li Yi took a sip of saliva imperceptibly. He wants to reject Uchiha Ho. But, as a man, he couldn't refuse. If he doesn't dare to face even this trivial matter, what kind of man is he? Therefore, Li Yi wanted to nod in agreement. But at this moment, a gentle female voice suddenly sounded from behind and entered into the ear. Your injury is not serious, you need treatment, let's go, follow me to the medical department. At the same time as the voice sounded, a small hand as soft as jade grabbed Li Yi's palm and forcibly pulled him away. Before Li Yi could react, he was pulled 3 or 4 meters away by the opponent. Hee, take care of your injury, we'll talk next time. Uchiha said with a smile. Li Yi came back to his senses and turned his head to look, only to realize that the person pulling him turned out to be a masked woman. She also wears a mask. Li Yi asked, the battle is over, why don't you take off the mask? The woman didn't answer, but pulled Li Yi away without saying a word. Soon, the two walked out of the practice ground and came to a dark alley. Girl, you just don't take off your mask. What did you bring me here for? Li Yi, knowingly asked, said. Woman finally said, go to the medical department by yourself. Course, before she could finish her sentence, Li Yi suddenly hugged her and buried her whole face in her chest. Chapter 242 Tsunade. Because this chapter does not meet the review requirements, the author has been notified that it is being revised urgently. Please refresh and try again later. Chapter 243 Lost in Love. I don't dare to drive anymore. In the last chapter, I wrote a word, facial cleanser, which caused the chapter to be blocked. The world is very uncomfortable now. The woman took off the mask, revealing a beautiful and prosperous face. The granddaughter of the original Hokage Senju Hashirama, Tsunade. At this moment, everything makes sense. I miss you. After that, Li Yi wanted to hug Tsunade again. Like a shameless rascal. However, Tsunade stretched out a slender jade finger, pressed against Li Yi's eyebrows, did not let him get close to him, and said softly, "Men and women are not kissable, as Uchiha Makoto's man, don't touch me." Lee Yi pouted, and was speechless for a moment. "How did you know that?" Lee Yi took a half step back and asked while rubbing his eyebrows. "That is to say, you admit it?" Tsunade wrinkled her nose. Lee Yi fell silent. Tsunade laughed, as if his heart ached, and said, "When Lord Hokage told me about this, I didn't believe it, but I didn't expect it to be true." Lee Yi was speechless. Tsunade continued, "Since you already want someone's body, then you should be responsible to her and don't let the little girl down." With that, Tsunade put on his mask and turned to leave. But at this moment, Lee Yi suddenly stretched out his right hand, grabbed Tsunade's little hand, and said, "Wait, listen to my explanation." Tsunade didn't look back, just said lightly, "What else is there to explain? Things have already happened, time can't be turned back, what else do you want to explain?" Lee Yi wanted to say, "What happened last night, I was also forced." However, as a man, it would be a little too weak to say such words. Course, Lee Yi didn't say it, but Tsunade said, "I know even if you don't say it. Last night, you were drugged by that little girl, so you don't know anything, right? Looks like I don't have any privacy, is Anbu watching me?" Lee Yi frowned slightly. "You are the key observation object, and it is reasonable to monitor you. Not to mention these, in any case, as a man, you must take responsibility." After saying that, Tsunade gently pulled away Lee Yi's right hand and walked forward. However, when he reached the entrance of the alley, Tsunade suddenly stopped and said, "Although I don't know what happened to you, your strength makes me very happy." After saying that, Tsunade jumped out of sight. Lee Yi stood there, rubbing his eyebrows, looking worried. Who would have thought that Tsunade would know what happened last night as soon as he came back? This is troublesome. Lee Yi knows Tsunade's temperament very well. Since she already knows about this, she will definitely give up this relationship on her own initiative, so as to fulfill Uchiha Makoto. However, Lee Yi didn't want to give up Tsunade. If he really had to choose between Tsunade and Uchiha Makoto directly, then Lee Yi would choose Tsunade even if he was scolded for being irresponsible. However, now, Lee Yi doesn't even have the chance to choose this. How about I'll be a bit scumbag? As long as I can save Tsunade and use some scumbag skills, it's okay. Lee Yi was confused. However, just when Lee Yi was worried, a cadenced voice suddenly came from the air above his head. "Yo. Young man, you seem to have lost your love." Lee Yi was taken aback. This cadence voice is very recognizable. In Konoha village, who else can make such a funny voice except Jiraiya, one of the Sannin? Chapter 244 Jiraiya. A man descended from the sky and landed in front of Lee Yi. Lee Yi fixed his eyes. Man stretched out his right hand towards Lee Yi. "You are the Lee Yi that Tsunade often mentions, right? Nice to meet you, come with me." Lee Yi squinted at the man. He was tall and wore a forehead guard with the word, "oil," written on his head. Long white hair up to the waist, with yuhi-colored marks under the eyes, wearing a yuhi-colored jacket with brown clothes under the jacket, clogs on his feet, armor-like equipment on both hands, and his cadence the voice of, "Oh, by the way, you don't know me yet, ha ha ha, let me introduce myself. My name is Jiraiya, and I'm Tsunade's classmate." Jiraiya laughed and said. Lee Yi thought to himself, how could Lao Su not know you? One of the most popular characters in Hokage. Even if you haven't seen Hokage, you may know you, let alone me, a veteran Hokage fan. Lee Yi shook hands with Jiraiya and asked, "Where to?" "Go for a drink." Jiraiya naturally smiled and said, "I'm broken up, don't you have to drink? Go, I'll accompany you." After saying that, Jiraiya put an arm around Lee Yi's shoulder. This guy is really familiar. Lee Yi was speechless. I just met, and after a few words, are you going to take me out for a drink? However, Jiraiya in the original Hokage as also of this character, so Li Yi is not surprised. Li Yi shook his head. I didn't break up, so I don't need to drink. Jiraiya's eyes widened. I've been dumped by Tsunade, and it's still called no breakup. Then what's a breakup? Brother Li Yi, don't be stubborn, let's go, brother will take you to drink. After drinking, brother will take you again. Peeping at the women's bathhouse, I can tell you that the women in our Konoha village are all very well built, and you can definitely feast your eyes on them. Saying that, Jiraiya showed a look of madness, as if yearning. Li Yi was even more speechless. Although Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru account for one of the three items of prostitution and gambling, but Jiraiya is too much, right? We just met, we said 2 or 3 words, and we are just a stranger. You are one of Sannin after all, and you are an example to many ninjas. You should lead by example and set a good example in both your words and deeds. But now you're talking about these lewd things to a stranger like me. What do you want me to think of you? The role models are all gone. Oh yes, if you don't like the tavern environment in our Konoha village, I have a good place. It's absolutely quiet, there's absolutely no one else but the 2 of us, and the scenery is so beautiful, it's a good place to drink. Jiraiya hugged Li Yi and said with a smile. Mount Myoboku. Li Yi blinked. Jiraiya's face changed, and her body trembled. She immediately took a half step back, stared at Li Yi with cautious eyes, and asked in a low voice, how did you know? Li Yi can feel Jiraiya's hostility. If his answer makes Jiraiya dissatisfied, then Jiraiya is very likely to kill him. At this moment, Jiraiya's free and unrestrained Ronin image disappeared, replaced by the absolute majesty of being Konoha Sannin. Li Yi replied immediately, Tsunade told me. Haha, I think so too. Jiraiya laughed loudly, put her arms around Li Yi's shoulders again, and forcibly took him away. Go. Go for a drink. Go watch the chick after drinking. Life must be full of joy. Chapter 245 Orochimaru found it. The 2 were walking on the road. Does Tsunade mention me often? Jiraiya asked curiously. Not at all. Li Yi shook his head. Then how often does she approach me in front of you? Jiraiya asked again. Li Yi wanted to answer, not once. Was with Tsunade, she was like a little girl who never mentioned Jiraiya once. If Li Yi wasn't a traveler, he wouldn't know Jiraiya at all. However, in order not to make Jiraiya too sad, Li Yi said, I mentioned it a few times, but the frequency is not high. What about Orochimaru? Jiraiya asked again. He liked to compete with Orochimaru since he was a child. Almost. Li Yi said. After all, you are brothers from the same sect. Ha ha ha, I'll just say it. How can I possibly be weaker than that Orochimaru guy? Jiraiya laughed, proud. Jiraiya, when will your character change? At this moment, a hoarse voice sounded from behind. The sound was very strange, and people couldn't help but get goosebumps. This voice, Li Yi, is very familiar. But Jiraiya is more familiar than Li Yi. He immediately turned his head and looked behind him, where a pale-skinned man was standing on the ground, looking at the 2 with snake eyes. Orochimaru. Wow, Orochimaru, you're back too. I've been looking for you for a long time. Jiraiya immediately hugged Orochimaru forward. But at this moment, with a bang, the Orochimaru in Jiraiya's arms turned into a wooden stake. Separation. At the same time, Orochimaru's disappointed voice sounded from not far. Jiraiya, you are still like this, you haven't grown at all. The 2 looked for sound. Orochimaru's body came from not far away. Jiraiya stepped forward and put his arms around Orochimaru's shoulders again, laughed and said, Oh, don't be so cold, long time no see, let's go for a drink together. Orochimaru shook his head. I don't drink, alcohol is not a good thing, it can make people delirious and even degenerate. Then what are you doing with me? Jiraiya frowned, turned her head at the same time, and whispered to Li Yi, his name is Orochimaru, he is a very tsundere man, and he is duplicitous. Don't look at him so cold on the surface, but he is actually very hot inside, he is a sullen man. However, as soon as Jiraiya finished speaking, Orochimaru said coldly, he, who said I came to see you? Huh. Jiraiya was taken aback. Orochimaru, I'm here to find brother Li Yi. Huh. Jiraiya kept blinking, looked at Li Yi, and then at Orochimaru, his eyes kept wandering between the two. Suddenly his eyes lit up, his left fist smashed lightly on his right palm, and said in a voice of sudden realization, oh I see. You two have known each other long ago, haven't you? It took so long to understand, you are still so stupid. Orochimaru sighed softly, his tone extremely disappointed. Li Yi stood aside and narrowed his eyes. Sannin has witnessed the deaths of countless people, and among these dead, there are several people who they regard as important, such as Kato Dan, Nawaki. In the original book of Hokage, because of the death of these people, Tsunade was willing to degenerate, and Orochimaru turned black and turned to the road of rebellion, and only Jiraiya persisted in optimism. Although the world is different from the original, the characters of the three of them have not changed. Tsunade is becoming depressed, Orochimaru is gradually darkening, and only Jiraiya is still actively facing life. Chapter 246 Orochimaru's Plan. What's the matter? Li Yi looked at Orochimaru and asked. Orochimaru replied, Brother Li Yi, this is not the place to talk, please come with me. After he finished speaking, he turned around and walked into the distance. Li Yi intends to follow. However, Jiraiya grabbed Li Yi's clothes and said, Li Yi, wait a minute. Huh. Li Yi blinked, a little puzzled. Did Jiraiya already know what Orochimaru did? Jiraiya did not explain, but narrowed her eyes, the light in her eyes flickered, and she was thinking about something. And the next moment, he said, I'll go with you. After that, he shouted at Orochimaru, Hey, I'm with Li Yi. No. Orochimaru didn't want to directly shake his head. This is a secret between me and brother Li Yi. Where should you go? Don't disturb us. Ah, secret. What secret? Let me hear it. Jiraiya put her arms around Orochimaru's shoulders and said with a smile. It's still called a secret. Orochimaru asked back. Jiraiya was speechless and could only laugh. Don't worry, brother Li Yi is my good friend, I won't shoot against my good friend. Orochimaru said. Jiraiya was speechless and had to compromise. Li Yi and Orochimaru go into the distance. I didn't expect that kid to know Orochimaru, and the friendship between the two seems to be very good. Tisk, things are a little troublesome. Jiraiya smacked her lips. Orochimaru took Li Yi to a damp house. There is an enchantment around this house, which can block audio and video. What the two of us say here will not be transmitted to the ears of the third person. Orochimaru said in a hoarse voice. Li Yi asked directly, have you discussed it? Orochimaru nodded. Well, Lord Danzo promised me to give me financial support. Where's the test subject? Li Yi asked. He's still thinking about it. Orochimaru replied. My experiment is against human ethics, even Danzo-sama would not dare to agree easily. Li Yi said, as long as you can make a grade that makes him satisfied, he will agree to any request you make. Well, you read it very well. Orochimaru nodded. You asked me to come here for more than that, right? Li Yi said again, tell me, if there is anything else, don't beat around the bush. He. Orochimaru let out a penetrating laughter, looked at Li Yi and said, I wanted to sell it for a while. If that's the case, then I'll make a long story short. The first thing is that Uchiha Fugaku is going to attack you. Li Yi's expression remained unchanged and he asked, he's back. Orochimaru nodded. What about the second thing? Li Yi asked. Orochimaru replied with a smile, do you want to save Tsunade? Li Yi, bullshit. Orochimaru, I have a way. Li Yi, come and listen. Orochimaru said with a smile, you should know that Tsunade has a younger brother, who is also my apprentice, named Nawaki. Hearing this, Lee frowned and asked, do you want to resurrect Nawaki? Orochimaru's eyes, and he looked at Lee with admiration and sighed, Brother Lee, you really understand me too well. Course. As soon as Orochimaru finished speaking, Lee glared at him and said in a low voice, if you don't want to die, then don't do this. Of course, if you want to die, I didn't say anything. Chapter 247-bait. It's that serious? Orochimaru asked with a slight frown. Lee replied, as Tsunade's classmate, you should know her temper well. Failure aside, but what if it succeeded? Orochimaru asked. Whether it is failure or success, the result is the same, as long as you dare to try, then she will not let you go. Lee said in a low voice. You know Tsunade well. Orochimaru narrowed his eyes slightly. Lee didn't answer, but asked, is there anything else? Aren't you curious about my resurrection technique? Orochimaru asked. Lee said, it's either the direct resurrection of the living, or the technique of impure world reincarnation. Orochimaru asked suspiciously, the technique of impure world reincarnation. What kind of ninjutsu is that? You don't know. Lee was a little surprised. Orochimaru nodded. Lee smiled and said in his heart, yes, he is still so young, of course he does not understand many forbidden techniques in Konoha village. Lee replied, the technique of impure world reincarnation is a ninjutsu created by the second-generation Hokage Senju Tobirama. It can revive anyone who has died, but it must have a carrier for resurrection, and if the carrier is suitable, it can even be used infinitely. A power close to the peak of his lifetime. Quote. Hearing Lee's words, Orochimaru's eyes lit up and said incredulously, there is such a ninjutsu. Lee nodded. Well, there are countless ninjutsu invented by the second-generation Hokage. The technique of impure world reincarnation is one of the techniques he is most proud of. Then do you know the specific hand seal method of the impure world reincarnation technique? Orochimaru asked curiously. Lee shook his head. I don't know. Okay, let's not talk about this. Do you have anything else to do? Just leave without me. One last thing. Orochimaru said. The country of water dropped the virus in our country of fire, and many people were infected, but they did not show symptoms. Lee frowned slightly, his expression became a little serious, and asked, the kind of virus that Ayame was infected with. Orochimaru said, I thought Tsunade had already told you about it. Tsunade had been lurking in the land of water to investigate this matter, and all I got was her information. Hearing this, Lee gave a wry smile and thought, she has been jealous and angry, how could she tell me these things? Orochimaru. According to Tsunade's information, the virus that Ayame's little girl was infected with was only the first-generation virus. That virus can infect both ordinary people and ninjas, but the infection rate is not high, so the country of water gave up the first-generation virus. Viruses, turn to the second-generation virus. The second-generation virus can only infect ninjas, and the more chakras the ninjas are, the easier they are to be infected. Quote. Lee heard this, his expression changed slightly, and he thought, isn't Tsunade dangerous? Orochimaru continued. Many people in our Konoha village have been infected with the second-generation virus. Although they do not show symptoms, this virus is a ticking time bomb, and it may break out when the land of water attacked us. Lee asked, who is researching the antidote? Of course Tsunade. Orochimaru replied. No accident, as short as 10 days or more than a month, the antidote can be researched, so in order to delay the time, we need a bait, Brother Lee, I think you are very suitable for that bait. Chapter 248-That's it. Lee didn't want to directly shake his head and refuse. I don't do risky things. Orochimaru explained. It's not risky, the risk is only 1%. Lee shook his head again. Don't say 1%, even if it's 1/10,000th. I won't do it, maybe the god of bad luck will come to me. Brother Li Yi, you have no confidence in your own strength. Orochimaru deliberately used aggressive tactics. Li Yi nodded directly. Yes, I just don't have the confidence. Orochimaru was speechless. Who would have thought that Li Yi, who should have been young and energetic, would be so old? Little brother Li Yi, you have robbed you of the big sword and shark muscle. You have insulted the dignity of the country of water. The hatred between you is inexhaustible. No one is more suitable to be the bait than you. For the sake of Konoha village, you cannot sacrifice. A moment. Orochimaru asked. Li resolutely shook his head. I sacrificed for Konoha village, so who sacrificed for me? Anyway, I don't do it, you can find someone else. After speaking, Li Yi turned around and planned to leave. However, just as Li Yi turned around and did not take 2 steps, a loud roar suddenly resounded in this narrow room. Roar. The sound of dragon roar. I saw the golden light erupting on Li Yi's back, and a huge golden dragon sprang out from Li Yi's body, directly blasting a python into blood. Huh. Li Yi's face changed, and he immediately turned to look. But I saw that python flew out of Orochimaru's cuff. Huh. Li Yi's face was furious, and a second golden dragon flew out of his body. Roar. The 2 golden dragons formed a circle, slowly revolving around Li Yi's body, and the imposing momentum caused a breeze. Orochimaru's flowing hair was blown. He looked at Li Yi with an extremely admiring look, and said, Brother Li Yi, your body is really wonderful. If you can be me, how good would that be? Quote. Li Yi didn't speak, just stretched out his right hand and pointed lightly in the direction of Orochimaru. Roar. A golden dragon erupted with a roar, which turned into a golden light with a swish, and went straight to Orochimaru. Orochimaru's cuffs flew out of pythons one after another, biting at the golden dragon with their mouths open. However, almost in the blink of an eye, these pythons were blasted into blood slag, not a single one remained. Li Yi stood on the spot and said coldly, the battle between the snake and the dragon is like the glory of the firefly and the moon. It's ridiculous. However, as soon as Li Yi finished speaking, Orochimaru's figure appeared behind Li Yi, his right arm turned into a python, and it bit towards Li Yi's neck. As long as the skin is bitten, the power of the curse will infiltrate, and then Li Yi will be unable to move and can only be controlled by him. But at this moment, the second golden dragon suddenly appeared, and with a roar, Orochimaru flew out. The impact caused by the impact was too great, and the golden dragon exploded into the sky with a direct bang, while Orochimaru was safe and sound, but his arm was a little numb. He. Orochimaru uttered a hoarse voice with pride. But the next moment, his laughter stopped abruptly. He can't stop laughing. I saw that the golden light that filled the sky did not dissipate, but reunited to form a golden dragon again. At the same time, the first golden Longyi flew back. 2 golden dragons surrounded Li Yi. The golden light was shining, mighty and domineering. Li Yi stood with his arms crossed, looked at Orochimaru and sneered, that's it. I thought it was so cruel. Chapter 249-tentative. In fact, even if you get hit with Orochimaru's spell, it's not a big problem. The really powerful spells are based on Changwu, and develop the spells of the sky and the earth. In the original Hokage, the main reason for Uchiha Sasuke's strength is the curse of the sky. But Orochimaru hasn't met Shigego yet, so the spells he developed are very common, the damage is not high, and the sequelae are not big. But even so, Li Yi couldn't let Orochimaru touch him. Since he shot himself, don't be polite to him. Done. Roar. The loud dragon roar echoed in the room. Outside world. There is an endless stream of people coming and going. But because there is an enchantment in the house, even if the battle breaks out in the house, the outsiders will not be able to hear it. That's why Orochimaru dared to take a shot at Li Yi. However, Orochimaru dented Li Yi's strength. I saw a crack suddenly and silently crack open on the wall. Then, over time, the gaps became more and more dense, like a spider web in the blink of an eye. The entire wall bulged slightly, but there was no sound, so it was not noticed. Of course, the next moment. Boom! There was a loud noise, accompanied by the flickering of golden light. As soon as the thin figure flew out, to be precise, it was blasted out. This person was Orochimaru, and the one who blasted him was a looming giant golden dragon. Everyone was startled, and hurriedly turned to look. But at this moment, a huge toad descended from the sky and landed on the ground with a bang, blocking the figures of Orochimaru and Lee Yi. At the same time, Jiraiya's loud voice echoed. "Everyone, there is a beast here, leave it to me to deal with, you all hurry up and leave." "It's Jiraiya-sama. With Lord Jiraiya around, we'll be safe. Let's listen to Jiraiya-sama and get out of here." Jiraiya standing on top of Toad's head, everyone felt at ease. Reason why everyone had no doubts was not only because of their trust in Jiraiya, but also because the peculiar roar just now was indeed the voice of a beast. Everyone left one after another, and in the blink of an eye, there were only 3 people left between heaven and earth. Bang! The huge toad turned into a cloud of white mist and disappeared with the wind. Lee Yi fell to the ground, looked at Orochimaru whose clothes were tattered, and said with a laugh, "It turns out that you also have a time when you are shriveled." Orochimaru didn't answer Jiraiya, but looked ahead with cautious eyes. There, in the big hole in the wall, Lee Yi walked out with his arms crossed. Even though the 2 golden dragons had disappeared, Orochimaru could not help but be cautious when he saw him holding his arms. You know, just now, Lee Yi stood still with his arms folded, and the 2 flying dragons blasted him out. However, Orochimaru is rough and fleshy and barely injured. Although he wanted to continue to test Lee Yi's strength, Jiraiya had already appeared, and he had also alarmed many ordinary people, so he had no chance to continue testing. Therefore, Orochimaru looked at Lee Yi and said, "Brother Lee Yi, I was just testing you, I hope you don't misunderstand." Course, as soon as Orochimaru's voice fell, Jiraiya slapped him on the back of the head and cursed angrily. Chapter 250-Stun Orochimaru. "You promised me that if you don't shoot him, why don't you talk about it?" Jiraiya asked with wide eyes. Orochimaru has a severe pain in the back of his head, and he has the urge to beat Jiraiya. However, the biggest threat in front of him is Lee Yi, so Orochimaru had no choice but to say, "Little brother Lee Yi is the best bait, but I'm worried that his strength is not enough, and the bait will be killed, so I try to test him." What's the result? Blink of course. Brother Lee Yi's strength greatly exceeded my expectations. Orochimaru said in a serious tone, "His tactics are very tricky. If the enemy doesn't understand him, then even Jonin is not necessarily his opponent." "Lee Yi, you promised to be the bait." Jiraiya looked at Lee Yi in surprise and asked. Lee Yi shook his head, "No." "Then why did Orochimaru test you?" Jiraiya pointed to Orochimaru. Orochimaru said in a hoarse voice, "As a ninja in Konoha village, many things are beyond your control. Brother Lee Yi, although you don't want to be a bait, if the above order comes down, then you must do it." Jiraiya's face also became a little cautious, and asked, "So this is the reason why you are testing him, I understand." Lee Yi smiled. Orochimaru's mouth is indeed very powerful, it can turn black into white and reverse right and wrong. He clearly wanted to use Lao Su as an experimental body just now. However, Lee Yi didn't care about this either. People like Orochimaru were half genius and half lunatic. Seeing that Lee Yi had withdrawn from his offensive stance, Orochimaru was relieved and stopped defending. But at this moment, an oval hole suddenly appeared on the ground beneath Orochimaru's feet. Immediately, a pair of hands stretched out, grabbed Orochimaru's ankles at lightning speed, and pulled him down. Orochimaru only felt his body suddenly fall, but the next moment, his feet felt real again. But I saw that his body had been locked in the soil. Almost at the same time, the loud dragon roar resounded between the heavens and the earth. Roar! Like lightning, the 2 golden dragons charged towards Jiraiya. Jiraiya's face changed, and he hurriedly defended. But at this moment, the figure of Lee Yi suddenly appeared in front of Orochimaru, and kicked Orochimaru's pointed chin mercilessly. Boom! And a wave of air visible to the naked eye spread out, and a door kiba in Orochimaru's mouth flew out directly, accompanied by blood foam, and flew 3 meters away. He fainted immediately, his head drooping, unconscious. At the same time, when the 2 golden dragons touched Jiraiya's body, they disappeared out of thin air. Apparently, the 2 golden dragons are just a cover to distract Jiraiya. Jiraiya is Orochimaru's fellow apprentice and brother. How could he just watch Orochimaru be beaten by someone else? So if you want to fight Orochimaru, you have to distract Jiraiya first. Clap clap clap. It's beautiful, it's so beautiful, everything is between lightning and flint. I don't have a reaction at all. Jiraiya's laughter and applause could be heard in the distance. Sound of bang. Jiraiya beside Lee Yi turned into a cloud of white mist, and Jiraiya's body appeared 7 or 8 meters away, standing on the ground clapping. Lee Yi smacked his lips. Jiraiya is worthy of being one of Sannin, and immediately uses the clone technique when he finds danger. This kind of fighting consciousness is indeed not comparable to ordinary people. Chapter 251-relocate. Lee Yi glanced at Orochimaru. Since Jiraiya can use the double in time, Orochimaru should also be able to. After all, the 2 are on the same level. To be precise, Orochimaru is even stronger than Jiraiya. Jiraiya's really powerful period was when he became Immortal Zaiho after training on Mount Myoboku. In that state, he was simply invincible, and there were few rivals in the ninja world. But the current Jiraiya is still very young and has not practiced sage art. Although he is also very strong, he is still a little worse than a genius like Orochimaru. Therefore, even Jiraiya can dodge, Orochimaru should not be a problem. However, what surprised Lee Yi was that the Orochimaru, whom he regarded as a stand-in, did not disappear, but was buried in the ground motionless. Jiraiya moved and stood between Lee Yi and Orochimaru, looked at Lee Yi and said with a smile, "Brother Lee Yi, although Orochimaru has a bad character, he did not cause you any actual damage, so you just there are a lot of adults, don't care about him, spare him a small life." Huh. Lee Yi's eyelids twitched slightly. Orochimaru buried in the soil is not a stand-in, but a real person. You actually knock Orochimaru unconscious. Lee Yi suddenly felt an illusory feeling. Over the years, he has been living at the bottom, and being ridiculed by countless people every day. Byakugan lives in this world in front of everyone. It is precisely because of this experience that although Lee Yi has a very strong strength now, he is still not proud, but feels that it is not enough. Today, he knocked Orochimaru stunned. Although there was a sneak attack, the success of the sneak attack was also Lee Yi's strength. Orochimaru, one of the dignified Konoha Sannin, a legend in the entire ninja world, was actually defeated by an unknown person. If this story spreads out, I don't know how many people will be shocked. Looks like I'll have to reposition myself. Lee Yi's mouth twitched slightly. Before, he was very humble and always felt that he was not strong enough. Indeed, it is only the second-order supernatural, no matter how you look at it, it is impossible to be powerful. However, Lee Yi has too many means. Ruyi Golden Hoop, Door Fruit, 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art, Devouring Divine Body, and so on. Each of these means can make Lee Yi's combat power soar. Lee Yi's own strength is indeed only the extraordinary second order, but with those means, then, even if the opponent is the extraordinary fourth order, Lee Yi may be able to pass a few tricks. The current Lee Yi is not what it used to be. Lee Yi, I will take Orochimaru to heal my wounds first, and I will drink with you later. Next time I must take you to Mount Myoboku. I think the great immortal will like you very much. After saying that, Jiraiya pulled Orochimaru out of the soil like pulling a seedling, and turned to leave on his shoulders. Lee Yi stood there and narrowed his eyes slightly. Great immortal. There was an inexplicable gleam in his eyes. In Hokage's original work, the Great Immortal is a huge toad that has lived for hundreds of years. It is the same era as the Six Paths Immortal, and has taught the Six Paths Immortal sage art. The strength is extremely powerful and immeasurable. And most importantly, it has the ability to predict the future. Among the Hokage ninjas, it predicts that Jiraiya will become the master of the savior. It's amazing. So Lee Yi is very curious, can the big toad fairy see his past and future? Chapter 252_plan. Lee Yi opened the system panel. The quest line has changed, and one more item is added, regain Tsunade's favor. The subtext of this sentence, Tsunade has no good feelings for Lee Yi. Damn, do you still need to say that, even if there is no such task, I have to chase Tsunade back? Lee Yi secretly clenched his fists. But then again, this system is too complicated, right? Not only let me capture Uchiha Makoto's heart, but also let me gain Tsunade's favor. Do you still want me to open a harem in this world? Although it is not bad to open a harem, but... Well, it's really good to open a harem. Longing suddenly appeared on Lee Yi's face. But in the next moment, he hurriedly shook his head, shook off the dirty thoughts in his mind, and said in his heart, the first task at present is to get Tsunade to change his mind. This kind of thing cannot be delayed. Once it is delayed, then Tsunade may be real. Give up. In fact, Lee Yi is very aware of Tsunade's psychology. Lee Yi and Uchiha Makoto had already had a physical relationship. Tsunade voluntarily gave up Lee Yi in order to fulfill Uchiha Makoto. Logically speaking, after this kind of thing happened, the relationship between Lee Yi and Tsunade has become a dead end that cannot be resolved. However, for a scumbag like Lee Yi in the 21st century, there are thousands of ways to get it back. However, with so many ideas, it is difficult to put them into action. Therefore, Lee Yi must develop a set of absolutely meticulous plans. But, before that, Lee Yi wants to talk to Uchiha Makoto. Uchiha Makoto do that to him. If it's just a one-night stand, it just enters the body, not into life, that's okay to say. Who doesn't have an ex-girlfriend? But if Uchiha Makoto wants to hold him accountable, things are going to get in trouble. With Uchiha Makoto's character, she would openly snatch Tsunade, and at that time, the chance of recovering Tsunade is so small that it is almost negligible. Uchiha Makoto's attitude before putting it into action. Jiraiya and Orochimaru have left. Lee Yi intends to go home. However, just as Lee Yi was walking on the road, an elegant female voice suddenly came from behind. Lee Yi, see you again. Turning his head and looking, the person who opened the mouth was a pretty woman with a very beautiful appearance. Although the real age was 37 or 8, it was because of the excellent maintenance, so she looked like a wonderful woman of 27, with her whole body up and down. All exude a sexy, charming and intellectual atmosphere. Uchiha Makoto's mother, Uchiha Ho. Auntie. Lee Yi smiled and said hello. But he said in his heart, you came to me on purpose. Lee Yi, I have something I want to talk to you about. Let's find a place. Uchiha asked with a slight smile. Uchiha's words, deeds, frowns, all exudes a tempting atmosphere, making Lee Yi almost blurt out, okay. If it was Lee Yi from the previous life, when he heard Uchiha's words, he would definitely be delusional. Uchiha is not only at the age of a wolf like a tiger, but also extremely perfect in terms of appearance and figure, especially her enchanting figure curve, more it makes people swallow saliva. However, Lee Yi's willpower has changed since then, so he did not blurt out, but said slowly, Auntie, in fact, I have already made an appointment with Lord Jiraiya to have a drink together, but since my aunt is looking for me, then I will focus on my aunt's affairs. Subtext. For you, I broke up with Jiraiya, you see how much I value you. Chapter 253_Whose Room. Lee Yi originally thought that Uchiha would go to a place to eat. However, who would have thought that Uchiha would lead him directly home? That's right. The home of the patriarch of the contemporary Uchiha clan. Lee Yi swallowed a mouthful of saliva. What is rhythm? Why can't I understand something? Uchiha want to do. Uchiha he had already opened the door, stood in front of the door, turned to look at Lee Yi behind him, smiled maturely and charmingly, and said softly, "Come in." Hem. Lee Yi nodded in agreement and followed Uchiha into the house. Uchiha he walked in front, Lee Yi followed behind. She was wearing a kimono with a big bow tied behind her back, and Lee Yi suddenly wanted to untangle the bow. However, once it is untied, then Uchiha will probably be naked. Although Uchiha is indeed very beautiful, both in terms of body and appearance, he is first class, but Lee Yi is not hungry enough to start with married wives. Uchiha's house is huge, like a mansion. She took Lee Yi through one corridor after another, and finally came to a room. Lee Yi suddenly asked, "Is Makoto at home?" Uchiha shook his head. "She's not at home, she's on a mission." "Is that so?" Lee Yi nodded. For some reason, he breathed a sigh of relief. Uchiha opened the door and said with a gentle smile, "Go in." Hem. Lee Yi nodded, and the two walked into the room together. As soon as I took a step, a burst of aroma hit my face. Lee Yi looked intently, but found that this was a woman's boudoir. But it's not like Uchiha Makoto's boudoir. After all, after spending more than 2 weeks with Uchiha Makoto, Lee Yi already knows a lot about Makoto's living habits. She doesn't like green, but the sheets here are light green, and there are many green flowers and trees in the room, making the whole room a cool shade of light green. "Guess whose room is this?" Uchiha asked softly while making tea for Lee Yi. "It shouldn't be Makoto's room," Lee Yi said. "Oh, why?" Uchiha's hands stopped slightly. But Lee Yi didn't explain, just said, "Intuition." "Then your intuition is pretty accurate." Uchiha smiled gently. "Then, use your intuition to guess who this room belongs to." "Can't guess." Lee Yi shook his head. In fact, of course Lee Yi guessed that this boudoir should belong to Uchiha Makoto's older sister or younger sister. However, to Lee Yi's surprise, Uchiha said with a smile, "Actually, this is my room." Lee Yi was stunned. "What? Your room? You're not kidding me. You are a wife, do not sleep in the same room with your husband, but in a separate room. Or, is this your bedroom with the Uchiha patriarch?" "Actually, my husband and I have been separated for a long time." Uchiha he brought Lee Yi a cup of hot tea and said, "Spitting pandan." Lee Yi swallowed a mouthful of saliva. This scene seems familiar. Just imagine, a beautiful and pretty woman in her 30s not only brought you to her boudoir, but also said that she has been separated from her husband for a long time. Who the fuck doesn't want to get involved? It is said that women are like wolves and 40 like tigers, and Uchiha is just at the age of wolves like tigers, but she sleeps in separate beds with her husband. It is false to say that she is not lonely. Could it be that she took me to her boudoir, where a man and a woman share the same room, just wanting me to help her resolve her loneliness? Chapter 254 What did you do? Have some tea, please. Uchiha said with a smile. Lee Yi took a sip. Fragrant into the spleen. Good tea. Lee Yi exclaimed. You still understand tea? Uchiha's eyes flashed slightly. Well, understand something. Lee Yi nodded and said, Auntie, with all due respect, although the tea is good tea, it is brewed too quickly. If you filter it with water 3 times, the water used for the 3 filtrations is cold, hot and cold, so the 4th time you brew tea. The tea fragrance can be completely integrated into the tea water, and that is the real fragrance to refresh the spleen. Quote. Oh, yes. Uchiha nodded lightly and said with a smile, I thought you ninjas are a bunch of people who only fight and kill and have no fun in life. Hee, Auntie, you are joking. Among the ninjas, there are also many people who know how to appreciate and savor life. Lee Yi smiled lightly. He is now very suspicious. Uchiha's implication, is she saying that her husband is such a boring person? Does she really want me to help her solve her loneliness? I don't care, but, is your husband willing? What should I do if I was beaten by your husband? Moreover, even if your husband is willing, can your daughter be willing? Li Yi couldn't understand what this woman was thinking. Not wanting to play word games with this woman, Li Yi went straight to the point and asked directly, "Auntie, what are you looking for me for, please tell me." Uchiha shook his head and smiled, "You drink this cup of tea first." Okay. Li Yi had no choice but to drink the tea. Then he asked, "Auntie, can I now?" Of course, before he finished speaking, the voice stopped abruptly. He covered his head, stared at Uchiha with wide eyes. His tone was half panic and half angry. You drug me?" "Yes." Uchiha nodded lightly, her smile mature, charming and intellectual. "Why did you do this?" Li Yi covered his head and asked in a weak voice. "Why, you know it better than I do." Uchiha smiled slightly, stretched out his right hand at the same time, and gently stroked Li Yi's cheek. "Sleep, sleep, don't resist anymore." Her little hands were not only warm, but also very gentle, like a mother's, so that Li Yi couldn't bear it any longer. He closed his eyes and fell asleep directly. Seeing that Li Yi was already asleep, Uchiha put him on the bed. "Then take off his clothes one by one." The blink of an eye, Li Yi became a naked man. Uchiha looked at Li Yi's body up and down, nodded lightly and said, "Well, she has a good figure, no wonder that girl likes it." Then, Uchiha actually started taking off her own clothes. "I do not know how long it has been." Li Yi opened his eyes leisurely. However, when he woke up and found himself lying on the bed naked, he immediately asked in his heart, "System, how long have I been in a coma?" "Answer the host, about 20 minutes. The system replied in a crisp voice. "Why didn't you wake me up?" Li Yi questioned. Back to the host, the system detects that the host will not be in danger of life, so the passive calling function of the system will not be turned on. The system replied. "What did that woman do to me just now?" Li Yi asked again. However, before the system could answer, Uchiha's smiling voice entered his ears. "Oh, are you awake?" Li Yi turned his head to look. Saw Uchiha. He was washing his hands, and he was missing one piece of clothes. Li Yi frowned and asked, "Auntie, what have you done to me?" Chapter 255 Sand. "I didn't do anything to you, you just fell asleep," Uchiha said with a smile. Li Yi glanced around. He is now lying on Uchiha's bed, surrounded by a faint scent, which should be Uchiha's body fragrance. Moreover, Li Yi felt that something was wrong with his brother. Suddenly, Li Yi's eyes narrowed and he looked down at his arm. Yuhi. The size of a fingernail near the crook of the arm. Li Yi is not a fool, how could he not see that Uchiha must have done something to his body? "Auntie, don't lie to me anymore, I want to know the truth of the matter." Li Yi squinted his eyes and said, "And, if I told your daughter what happened today, how do you think your daughter would react?" In the second half of the sentence, Li Yi's tone was obviously gloomy. He is threatening Uchiha. Uchiha Ying smiled and said, "Don't be so angry, I'll tell you that, the Yuhi. On your arm is called Shugangsha, it's a test." Li Yi did not continue to listen to the latter words. Because of the 3 words, Shugangsha, he was already stunned. What the hell? Shugong Sand. Isn't that the thing in martial arts novels that tests whether a woman is perfect? I'm not a woman, so why should I guard the palace? I don't have that palace, either. Li Yi's face had become extremely gloomy, and he asked, "Auntie, what do you mean?" "You're so smart, don't you understand what I mean?" Uchiha said with a smile, "You and Makoto have already had sex. In order to ensure that you can treat Makoto wholeheartedly in the future, I have set a ban on your XX. You can only be with Makoto in the future. If you dare to cheat, then you'll be killed instantly." Hearing this, Li Yi's heart was full of curses. No wonder I feel something is wrong with my brother. It turned out to be someone's hands and feet. Auntie, if I tell your daughter about this, what do you think your daughter will think? Li Yi endured his anger and threatened Uchiha with Uchiha Makoto again. Uchiha smiled faintly. You don't have to threaten me with Makoto, I believe Makoto will understand me, but... Having said this, she suddenly smiled mysteriously and did not continue. But what? Li Yi asked with a slight frown. Uchiha smiled charmingly, mature and intelligent, and said, however, I also know that there is no such thing as a cat in the world. Men are all like this, so when you feel that it is boring to be with Makoto, you can come look for me. After all, I'm directly related to Makoto, and the restraint on you will mistake me for Makoto, so it won't happen. Hearing this, Li Yi suddenly felt that this seems to be not bad. But the next moment, he immediately denied this idea. Damn, you can't give up the entire grassland because of 2 trees, right? Nanny, with all due respect, last night, Makoto and I were just on a whim, so... However, before Li Yi had finished speaking, a gust of wind suddenly swept in, as sharp as a knife, making Li Yi's cheek hurt. Call. I saw Uchiha. He was as fast as lightning, and rushed to Li Yi in one step. Uchiha is smiling, her tone is like falling into an ice cellar. If you dare to be irresponsible, then I will castrate you now. Chapter 256 _ The Way Out. Uchiha. He who was close at hand, Li Yi swallowed. This woman is a bit cruel. Of course, she is not cruel, nor can she become the patriarch's wife of the Uchiha family and help her husband lead the entire Uchiha family. You know, the identity of the Uchiha family in Konoha village is very embarrassing, and the second generation is extremely repelling them. Although the second generation is dead, the policy still exists. Konoha village do not play with the children of the Uchiha family. The children of the Uchiha family can only play with themselves, and they are very lonely. And Uchiha is probably fighting for the peace between the Uchiha family and Konoha village these years. Indeed, she fought. That is, she has not gone out for many years, for fear that once she goes out, she will get into unnecessary trouble and affect the relationship between the two parties. Uchiha locked himself at home and stayed in his room all day. Her husband and daughter often don't go home. When she is bored, she studies various forbidden techniques. Like the Shugong sand on Li Yi, it belongs to a forbidden technique of sealing. Unless you know the hand seal method, it is difficult to unseal it. Li Yi didn't know this. He could feel that Shugongsha was suppressing his desire. This kind of ninjutsu, it is better to get rid of it early. Therefore, Li Yi said, Auntie, Makoto and Uchiha Fugaku are already engaged. Where do you put Uchiha Fugaku when you treat me like this? There is something wrong with that kid's character. I don't like him very much. On the contrary, I like you very much, so I want you to be Makoto's husband. Uchiha stretched out his right hand, stroked Li Yi's cheek, and said with a smile. Auntie, don't do this, it's impossible for us, you have a family, and I can't do anything out of the ordinary to you. Li is righteous. Hearing this, Uchiha just smiled and didn't speak. Li Yi asked again, what if Uchiha Fugaku is so angry that he wants to kill me? He doesn't have the guts. Uchiha Lotus Leaf shook his head confidently. This is not necessarily. If one day, he opens Mangekyo Sharingan, strength and ambition, he really dares to attack me. Li Yi said. Mangekyo Sharingan. Indeed, that ominous power is really powerful. Uchiha nodded, then smiled. Don't worry, if he dares to attack you, I will hit him. Li Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. It seems Uchiha Ho has seen Mangekyo Sharingan. It is estimated that it is his husband, that is, the contemporary Uchiha patriarch. Auntie, can you avoid it? I'll get dressed. Li Yi is still naked and a little cold, so he said. What's so shy about this? Just now, I carefully looked at every part of your body, and your XX, I also. Having said that, Uchiha clenched his hands at Li Yi, an expression you all know. Li Yi was helpless. What can I do? Could it be possible to beat Uchiha He and force her to take back the Shugong sand? But, can you beat it? And, even if he can beat it, Uchiha will be obedient. In these 2 hours of getting along, Li Yi has basically understood Uchiha's character. 8 characters: quirky, black-bellied and domineering. If you want to play yin with this kind of person, it is not very difficult. Auntie, my Shugongsha, when will you relieve me? Li Yi asked while putting on his clothes. Chapter 257-2 Evolutionary Opportunities. Release. Why release? Uchiha asked. It will stay with you forever. Expecting her to answer this, Li Yi smiled lightly and said, but you said just now that there are no cats in the world that don't steal sex. Are you trying to curb my nature? But as I said just now, after you marry Makoto, if you can't stand your loneliness, you can come to me, and I'll help you get rid of loneliness. Uchiha said with a gentle smile. Li Yi's expression became serious and serious. Auntie, I'm not joking with you. You are an elder, how dare I touch you? I'm not joking with you, or do you despise this old woman like me? Uchiha frowned slightly and asked. Li Yi squinted at her. He felt that Uchiha's words were at most 50% true. Although there is no Uchiha in the original work of Hokage, everyone in the Hokage world is very innocent, especially women, and almost never have the habit of messing around. Li Yi felt that Uchiha should be such a person. Even if the body of the Uchiha patriarch is dead, even if she is like a wolf now, even if she has been alone in an empty room, she is not an ordinary person after all, and she should be able to endure it. Moreover, Li Yi's most urgent idea now is to remove Shugongsha. Well, if you don't believe me, I can verify it now. Saying that, Uchiha was about to take off his clothes. Li Yi hurriedly shook his head. Forget it, Auntie, can't I believe it? He didn't want to be stunned by Uchiha again and become her subject again. Uchiha said again, well, after you and Makoto have a child, I will consider releasing the Shugongsha. Child? Li Yi's eyes narrowed slightly. Yes, after you become a father. Uchiha smiled and nodded lightly. Seeing that the negotiation failed, Li Yi could only ask in his heart, System, can you lift the seal of the Shugong sand? System immediately replied, yes. Method? Li Yi asked. 2 chances to evolve. The system answered very succinctly. Li Yi narrowed his eyes slightly again. 2 evolutionary opportunities. Why don't you go grab it? Don't you know how rare a chance to evolve is? However, these aspects reflect what a complicated sealing technique Shugongsha is. Why are you looking so gloomy? What are you thinking about? Uchiha shook his little hand and asked Li Yi's face with a breath of aroma. Before Li Yi could answer, she suddenly said, but there is one thing, you can rest assured. Huh? Li Yi blinked, his face puzzled. Uchiha smiled proudly and said, you will never be able to untie the Shugong sand. Li Yi's eyelids jumped. You should know that if you want to solve the spell, you only need to know the hand seal method of the spell. However, the Shugong sand on your body is different from the ordinary Shugong sand. It is my original seal art. It took me a few minutes of seal to finish this sealing technique. Quote. Li Yi heard this, he didn't realize the seriousness of the matter. Oh yes, let me show you my hand seal speed. Uchiha slowly raised his hands and said with a smile, I see clearly. The voice didn't fall. Swish swish. After images appeared directly on her hands. At least 3 prints a second. Li Yi almost spit out a mouthful of old blood. Chapter 258 Uchiha Yi. 3 prints a second. This speed, even among Jonin, is outstanding. However, the point is not here. 3 impressions per second, 180 impressions per minute, 1800 impressions in 10 minutes. Forbidden technique she set up on Lao Su has nearly 2000 seals. You fucking tease me. How can there be such a long ninjutsu? Uchiha finished his demonstration. He lowered his hands and said with a smile, "How is it, do you still have hope? If there is, please tell me, and I will turn you into complete despair." Her voice is very gentle, like water, which makes people feel relaxed and happy. However, the content of her words was so terrifying. Li Yi didn't answer, just scratched his head and smiled contemptuously. He has only one thought now: get out of this ghost place. I can't stay with this woman anymore. Li Yi had finished getting dressed, stood on the ground and said, "Auntie, I have something to do, can I go now?" "What's the matter with you?" Uchiha asked. Li Yi replied, "Some personal matters." However, Uchiha shook his head. "You can't go. As the husband-in-law of the next Uchiha patriarch, I have to teach you some rules." Huh? Li Yi opened his mouth. "You asked me to be Uchiha Fugaku's husband. I'm not gay. Whether in the original book of Hokage, or in this world, the next head of the Uchiha clan is basically Uchiha Fugaku." As expected. However, Uchiha said that she wants Uchiha Makoto to be the patriarch. What are you kidding? Where is the precedent for a woman to be the patriarch? I know what you are worried about, but your worries are meaningless, because you, an outsider, cannot influence our decision. Uchiha said with a smile, "Okay, let me tell you the first thing. After getting married, you will join our Uchiha family, so you have to change your name, Uchiha Yi." PFF'd. Li Yi almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. Uchiha Yi. Such a funny name. Even if the name is changed, I will still be called Uchiha Shukwon. Second thing, you. Auntie, I'm really in a hurry, and my life is at stake. Li Yi interrupted Uchiha and said, "Well, that's okay, anyway, the relationship between you and Makoto can't be resolved in a day or two." Uchiha nodded, comprehensively, and at the same time put his hand into his arms, took out a medal, with body temperature, handed it to Li Yi, and said, "From now on, you are a member of my Uchiha family, what's the matter? I, the Uchiha clan, protect you." Quote. "Don't be a bastard if it's cheap." Li Yi immediately took the medal. Uchiha suddenly gave a bad smile and said, "There is still my body fragrance on it, you can smell it as much as you like." Li Yi pouted. Who would have thought that the gentle and graceful Uchiha Makoto would have such a talkative and charming mother? "Okay, I'll take you out, come with me." Uchiha walked ahead with a twisted posture. Li Yi immediately followed. As the home of the patriarch of Uchiha, this mansion not only covers a large area, but also has a series of enchantments inside. If you are not familiar with the terrain here, you will definitely get lost. Of Uchiha a mistress of the family, Li Yi also walked for nearly 10 minutes before walking out of the mansion. However, when it came, it didn't take so long. Therefore, Li Yi felt that Uchiha was deliberately showing off to him. This woman is not only rude, but also black-bellied and domineering, she is absolutely incredible. Chapter 259-kill. With Uchiha, Li Yi breathed a sigh of relief. Being with that woman, he couldn't beat him, he didn't dare to scold him, and he couldn't reason with her. Li Yi opened the system panel. He has only one chance to evolve now. System, you give me another task, such as pushing Uchiha, I promise to complete this task within a day. Li Yi vowed. System replied, back to the host, the tasks are all randomly assigned, so the system can't decide. Forget it, I'm just talking about it. Li Yi waved his hand. To tell the truth, although Uchiha is beautiful, sexy, mature and charming, she is the best thing, but Li Yi doesn't want to attack her. After all, she has a family. Li Yi did not have the hobby of destroying other people's families. And, who knows, did Uchiha's rude words test him? If Li Yi is really beastly and starts to attack Uchiha, then what if he is really castrated? How dare that woman do such a thing? Li Yi looked at the task column. change Conan's attitude and kill Sukazan Fubuki. The only thing I can do is kill Sukazan Fubuki. Li Yi sighed lightly. In fact, the reason why Li Yi is so anxious is because of Tsunade. He wants to save Tsunade, and the most direct way is to dry firewood. However, in his current state, how the hell is he going to use firewood and fire? It will explode on the spot. So, for Tsunade, Li Yi has to unlock the Shugongsha. Kill Sukazan Fubuki. Li Yi clenched his right hand, killing intent blooming in his eyes. However, Li Yi did not act immediately, but went home first. Uzumaki Violet just got out of the shower, wearing a bathrobe and looking great. Li Yi took a deep breath, suppressed the severe pain somewhere, his eyes regained clarity, and asked, "How is the exam?" Li Yi finished the exam, Uzumaki Violet followed. However, since Li Yi went out with Tsunade, I didn't watch it. Violet replied, "Passed, but barely passed, and my strength is far less than that of you, master." Li Yi's battle with Tsunade was watched by Violet. She thought that she would also face such a disaster, but she didn't expect it to be very easy. "That's fine." Li Yi nodded, and his tone was straight. "Get dressed, let's go out." "Yes." Violet nodded immediately, not ashamed, and changed her clothes in front of Li Yi. Li Yi hurriedly turned his eyes away, took several deep breaths, and suppressed the severe pain like a knife. Violet got dressed and said, "Master, I'm ready, where are we going and what are we going to do?" Ask first and then clean up, or clean up and then ask, these are two completely different concepts. Violet's loyalty can be seen. Li Yi narrowed his eyes slightly and said in a low voice, "Go out and kill someone." Because both of them are Chunin and have the ability to protect themselves, the ninja watching the gate did not stop them and let them leave. Li Yi closed his eyes and used the door fruit to sense the position of Sukazan Fubuki. So far, Li Yi has not sensed Sukazan Fubuki. Li Yi kept walking. Violet supported Li Yi, preventing him from falling. She is a perceptive ninja, so she is also meticulously observing her surroundings to prevent sneak attacks from enemies. When the two came out, it was not even dusk yet. In the blink of an eye, midnight fell. Li Yi and Violet have come a long way. Suddenly, Li Yi suddenly opened his eyes. Sensed Sukazan Fubuki. Chapter 260-attacked. Li Yi was heading towards was the land of water. Today, Li Yi is far away from Konoha village. However, along the way, he was not attacked. And now, he feels where Sukazan Fubuki is. Li Yi opened his eyes, estimated in his heart, and said, "That guy is not in the land of water, but in the land of soup." As we all know, there is a strait between the land of fire and the land of water. In this strait, there are two other countries. One is the country of Vortex, and the other is the country of soup. The country of the Vortex is the hometown of the Uzumaki clan, but it has been destroyed. The land of soup still exists. In the original work of Hokage Akatsuki's Hidan, the second person who believed in death, came from the country of soup. If Li Yi's estimation is correct, Sukazan Fubuki is now in the land of soup. Although the country of soup is independent on the surface, it is adjacent to the superpower of the country of water, so in fact, it should be a subsidiary country of the country of water. Just to my liking. Li Yi grinned. If Sukazan Fubuki is in the land of water, then Li Yi wants to start. It is as difficult as going to the sky. And now, he is in the land of soup. God help too. Li Yi continued to walk forward. In order to make it easy to come and go, Li Yi must still have 80% of his stamina when he makes a sneak attack. On the way, Li Yi was attacked. The other party is several Chunins from the land of thunder who are on a mission. Discovering the identities of Li Yi and Violet, they attacked without saying a word. Li Yi didn't show any kindness to them. He took out the Rui gold hoop, and suddenly it became thicker, 10 meters in diameter, and smashed them into Mi-chan. With the improvement of Li Yi's strength, the Rui golden hoop has become more and more convenient. There was a fish that slipped through the net, hiding behind a tree. He is not very old, only 13 or 14 years old, and he should be the younger generation of those people. With just one blow, Li Yi smashed several of his seniors into Flesh Chan, which made him so frightened that his whole body was shaking. However, as a person from the land of thunder, he has his own dignity. He wants revenge, for the sake of his predecessors, and for the country. He first separated a clone to attack Li Yi. Li Yi just waved the Rui golden hoop lightly, without direct contact, just the strong wind, and it blew up the shadow clone. But at this moment, the lightning flashed suddenly, and the man's body suddenly flashed behind Li Yi, holding a kunai in his hand, and stabbed Li Yi's head. When Li Yi turned his head and waved, the Rui golden hoop smashed his head directly. Blood poured into the sky. However, before the head exploded, there was a slight arc on the corner of the child's mouth. His plan was successful. Because his body is covered with explosive symbols. At the moment he was killed, the explosive charms all exploded. Boom! Quote. A loud bang shook the forest. The chain explosion caused by dozens of explosive charms, even Jonan, if he can't dodge in time, I'm afraid he will be killed instantly. However, when the firelight dissipated, Li Yi and Violet stood on the ground unharmed, not to mention injured, not even their clothes were torn. Because the two golden dragons protected their bodies. However, the two golden Long Yi had reached their limit, and they all exploded. Li Yi smiled. At a young age, I have a lot of ambition, but ambition can't be eaten as a meal. If it were me, I would sneak away, and I would take revenge when I became stronger. Li Yi retracted his gaze and moved on. Finally, he came to a suitable place, and he was guaranteed to have 80% of his stamina when he arrived. Time to kill. Li Yi grinned, and the white Kiba teeth reflected the cold light.